I was looking at Steam charts to see which AC game is being played the most recently. And what I found was that Valhalla is the most played game, and the player count is almost double that of AC Shadows. I was actually expecting AC Shadows to be the most played since it's the newest and it just went on a massive sale last Christmas. But I guess people wanted to play as a Viking rather than a shinobi or samurai. Though it is important to note that this is only Steam numbers. I myself play Valhalla and Shadows on Newbie Connect and not on Steam. But anyway, since there are a bunch of players going into Valhalla, I decided to make this quick guide to help anyone who may have questions about Valhalla stealth, or just looking for some stealth tips and tricks in general. So let's start. So I made a Valhalla stealth guide a few years back where I explained how stealth in Valhalla works. If you've been around the community, you may have heard that Valhalla's stealth is non-existent, that it sucks, but I beg to differ. Now I'm gonna be honest, I'm not sure if I explained it well or if the things I said were totally accurate. But those were all based on my experience, and whenever I sneak around in the game, those are the things I take into account to remain undetected. So if you're having trouble where you're always getting spotted when you think you shouldn't be, then I suggest you watch at least the first 5 or 4 minutes of that guide, and it might help you understand how to sneak in the game better. I'll hover it here for a few seconds and the link somewhere on the screen, or just check out the description. My next tip is to avoid taking groups of guards, especially during the early levels when you don't have a lot of abilities or utilities. Now, since Valhalla and most AC games have game loops that revolve around clearing camps, it's just second nature to try and kill every enemy you see. Even when you're trying to be sneaky, you might still want to kill a group of 5 guards all crumpled together. However, during the early game, this is almost impossible to do if you don't have abilities like smoke arrows. Though you do get the Mark of Death ranged ability which allows you to kill multiple enemies, so that is a good option actually. However, if you're gonna do that, I suggest you take out isolated enemies first in case the ability does not do enough damage to kill your targets, just to minimize the number of hostiles you'll be fighting. But if your objective is not to clear a camp but instead steal an item or infiltrate a place, opting to avoid and just pass by guards is actually pretty effective. This is because high-profile actions like running or even prepping your bow will raise enemy suspicion and they'll notice you quickly. So crouch walking past them is the best tactic if you want to play heavily on being a sneaky Viking. Once you've played a dozen or more hours in Valhalla, you will have a bunch of abilities that are great for combat. Now, at face value, it would seem that ranged abilities are more suited for stealth, since you have the smoke and sleep arrow, scene in distraction, and other stuff. While melee abilities seem to lean more on combat, with a bunch of grapple moves and those that use weapons in unique ways. However, some abilities like the harpoon impalement and even the dive of the Valkyries can be used for stealth if given the correct situation. And using these abilities is actually one of the reasons why I enjoy playing stealthy in Valhalla. I try to experiment with certain abilities that seem more suited for combat, but then find out that it works while sneaking. This gives Eivor a bunch more options for stealth kills rather than just relying on the hidden blade or the bow. So if you're someone who wants to experience Valhalla in a very sneaky way, try to experiment with the abilities and see which one works for stealth. My favorite are the Harpoon Impalement and Vikinger Salute abilities due to the cool animations. Additionally, while not an ability, you can also use the torch as a distraction tool, which I also mentioned in my 2024 Valhalla Stealth Guide. Using the torch as a distraction tool is pretty effective, especially if you want to only distract one guard. If you're precise and lucky, you can isolate a guard who is in a group, which will make taking them out quietly easier. Using it to force a guard to stand on a more covered position is also a good way to use it. This will let you assassinate that guard safely. For my last tip, I suggest that if you get detected, embrace the chaos and engage with Valhalla's combat system, even partially. Personally, I like this combat system where enemies have weak points and then you can do cool takedowns when you stun them. So when I get detected, I often go all in with the combat. Add the variety of weapons, animations, and skills like throw weapons and missile reversal, and the combat just feels really great. Now, I know that if you're trying to play Valhalla as a pure stealth Viking, combat is the last thing you want to do. So if you're like that of a player and do not want to compromise, using tools like the smoke arrow can allow you to stun enemies and make your escape. Once you get far from guards who spotted you, they should return to their position or investigate dead bodies, although they will be more alert. Which is actually a good stealth mechanic since they don't just revert back to their default state before detection. In their alert state, they will detect you faster, so you'll move to approach more carefully if you need to return to the area. Depending on where they position themselves, sometimes they will be more scattered, which will allow you to assassinate them one by one easier. So just adapt to the situation and proceed with caution. And so yeah, that's my quick 2026 Valhalla Stealth Guide. If you haven't, try to watch at least half of the 2024 Valhalla Stealth Guide I mentioned earlier. I really think understanding how stealth works in Valhalla is key to enjoying it more. Plus, you can avoid scratching your head and wondering why a guard 50 meters away just spotted you while you were in a haystack aiming at someone else.